So I have a question for you. How many of you all actually did your floor plan? Great, wonderful, wonderful. So let's talk just briefly about your floor plan. Is there any insight that you have on your floor plan? What exactly did you do with this assignment? Describe it to me.
We just drew out like, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Like we did from the house we came from, and then like the house we're in now. So like our dorm or whatever, and then we just like drew out a floor plan.
So how many of you feel like you have an enormous amount of space in your floor plan now, compared to your floor plan in your home? You do? Oh, that is awesome. I love that. Okay, congratulations for the step up. I'm real proud of you. That's great. How many of you feel like you don't have as much space as what you do? Yeah. So what happens, first of all, before we take that, why do you think we have you draw out? I mean, talk to me about why we had you draw out your floor plan. Why do you think that's important, and why is that an important tool?
To make you realize how well off you actually are in some situations.
Yeah,
and in most
absolutely.
situations, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. Good one. Good one. I love, you're a half full kind of guy, right? I have that. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Okay, why else? Do you know this is probably one of the most, for those of you that are in psychology, one of the most powerful tools you can possibly use? And I'm going to tell you there isn't a time in my life that I don't utilize this particular tool. I utilized this just here recently on Thursday when I got a call from an academic advisor concerning a certain student on campus. The student was my son, of all things, and that he hasn't slept in several days, and we think he might be falling apart due to the pressure of academics. He has a heavy, heavy load. He had a bad semester, and his scholarships are in jeopardy, which adds even more pressure to his sweet, wonderful little life. And the first thing I do when I get down there, what do you think I did when I ask him? Can I see your dorm room? What do you think he's going to tell me?
No.
No way. I said, well, come on. Let me just see your door. Mom, they don't allow. Mom's back in there. I said, okay, I've been around the block. I know you can walk me in. Now tell me, let me go see your dorm room. You're not going to be able to get around this, but we need to see the dorm room. When I walked into this dorm room, for one, you can't walk into this dorm room. Okay, so let me just emphasize that altogether. So when I get this call that this person is just feeling overwhelmed and just frantic and everything, the first thing I start to look at is the dorm room, the floor plan. What is your living conditions like? So when I go in and I see that nothing has been unpacked from when he moved in, everything is piled up everywhere. It's just, well, it's exploded, like a bomb has gone off in this particular room. Is that a reflection of your life? Yeah. Are you able to concentrate in a room like that? Is there anyone here that can function well in that kind of environment? And sometimes that's what we were raised in, by the way, and it's very, very normal. For this particular child, I can tell you what he was raised in because I have a little bit of insight. It's not his norm. And so this was very, very difficult. How can that impact you? Why is the floor plan so important in reflection of your life? Anyone know? Okay. So, some of you are sharing rooms, right? This is my desk. This is a very generous room, by the way. It's too bad it's a desk. Is that not generous? Isn't that great? Yeah. So when there's stuff just feeling all over the place, and you have to do an assignment, and you need something, are you going to be able to do something as simple as finding a pencil or a pen? What if you need to find clothes to wear because you haven't hit the laundry, everything's kind of piled up and you haven't gone down and washed the laundry, things like that? Can it impact your hygiene? Yeah. When it's all chaotic like that, what does it do to your energy level?
Brings it down.
It makes you lazy.
It makes you what?
Lazy.
Yeah. Why does that happen, by the way?
I mean, me personally, my last dorm, my roommate, he was a good friend, but he was kind of like messy, so he always had stuff on the floor, and it would kind of aggravate me because I hate stepping over stuff on the floor. Like,
Yeah.
I'd rather have a clear floor than having to step over stuff. And I almost tripped and died, like,
Especially if the lights are off, you're trying to get to the bathroom, whatever, you know. It can be life or death. I hadn't even thought about that. Oh my goodness. So as a roommate of someone who has it together and organizes things, that can be draining in itself. Do you find yourself avoiding going into your room in that situation?
In that situation, yes.
Yeah,
And I was there in my room, so.
yeah. And why did you avoid it? Too much to deal with, yeah. It's also something out of your control, isn't it? It's out of your control. It's something that is a habit of somebody else's, and it kind of infringes on your lifestyle. So the first thing I think about is this poor roommate of his, by the way, who had no desire to unpack his stuff because you know what? He walked into this chaotic environment all of a sudden. And so you find him dodging coming back in, and their two are friends, of course, and he's avoiding coming back in. And so this little thing kind of can impact other people's lives too. So when I look at how do we go about all of a sudden when someone hasn't slept in days and has an enormous amount of homework and all of a sudden they're living off a Red Bull and some other things that I truly believe are just all destined for failure, how do we fill up your cup with energy in that type of situation? What would you recommend?
Make a change.
Make a change. What is the first thing that we need to do?
Set a goal.
Set a goal. That's a great one. Yeah. So this son of mine who doesn't have any energy, where's the first thing? I can look at him and say, hey, what's going on? Why is the academic pressure getting to you? But what he really needs is me to come in and say, guess what we're going to do first? Yes. I did not know 125 square feet can take 8 hours to clean and unpack. It's unbelievable. It's just unbelievable. But it can. Now, how do you think he feels when that task is done and the laundry is done and everything's done?
I feel like that when I clean.
Do you?
I clean,
Yeah. All of a sudden, he's finding energy and he's relaxing, and I know where everything's at. And oh my gosh, there was the assignment I was looking for, that this piece of paper the professor gave me. I now have my syllabus. Oh my gosh, there's my agenda, my calendar. Look, there's my book I've been looking for to take this one class. All of a sudden, we now have an organization, and it's all manageable again. So that was the first step that we have to look at. When I have families that come into me and they say, I am so overwhelmed, I can't take it anymore. I'm just overwhelmed. The first thing I'm going to look at, because the number one thing that energizes you is your home, your space. For some of you, you said, I felt good when I called and talked to my mom and dad, and I talked to my brother, I got to go home and visit. It re-energizes because you're going back to a space that for some absolutely energizes you. Now, is that for everybody? No. The reality is that there are some that going back home will actually deplete you. I mean, it's not a place that's organized. It's not a place that's full of necessarily the fond memories. Matter of fact, it can bring a lot of hardship. So when you are feeling depleted, this is probably not the place you're going to go to get re-energized, right? The place you have to look at is your current home environment. And so when I have couples that come in, or I have individuals that come in and they say those magic words, I'm feeling overwhelmed, they're shocked every time when I say, let's talk about your home. So when we're living in a home, let's pretend this is a living room, these are bedrooms, this is a bathroom, another bedroom, and here's the open space with a little dining room table. The first thing I ask them is, talk to me about your dining room table. And what do you think they're going to tell me? What is it?
You said clutter.
Yeah, of stuff. And then I'm going to ask, where do people sleep? Where do you do your homework at? Where do your kids do your homework at? And what exactly is going on? We're going to analyze the floor plan. And the first thing we're going to address before we can deal with any type of marital issues, before we can deal with any other type of stress issues, financial issues, the first thing I'm going to tell you is guess what we have to get in line first? You need to get your home environment where you can start to fill up your cup to be able to start to tackle some of those other issues. This is where we start, which is why it's the number one most useful tools for those that are going into therapy, for those that are going into the field that, for social workers, for all sorts of things. But we ourselves have to know that too. We have to know that when our life gets chaotic, what does our car usually look like? When it's chaotic, how many of you have gone into your car and you're like, wow, I can see all the things that I've eaten, I can see all the things that I've done into the floorboards or whatever. It becomes very, very messy. And usually that's a reflection. You can almost see when your dorm room's that way, your car's that way, guess what your life is like? It's chaotic. Yeah. And so the first thing when you find yourself depleted like that is to go in and say, I'm going to re-energize myself. Sometimes the greatest gift you can when you're absolutely stressed and overwhelmed and you have finals going on and all of these expectations of work, sometimes the greatest gift you can do to give yourself energy to be able to tackle and get that important research paper done or whatever, is to stop for a second and what can I do to make sure that everything's organized so I feel better, so I can energize and be able to take the next hurdle. Because as soon as you can do that, you can start to relax. You can start to handle things. You actually feel in control, right? So that is why we actually do the floor plan. And all the way throughout this, you're going to get different types of mental models. And this is just one of many mental models that we actually use. So the next one I want to talk to you about is the theory of change. How many of you know what the theory of change is? Does anyone know? Okay, well, you're going to know before it's all done, because it's actually another mental model that you can use, and one that I use on a day-to-day basis with people, and myself, by the way. So all of these things I will tell you I apply in my own life. We're not just teaching it, we actually want you to apply it into your life and help others with it as well. So I have a question that I really need to hear your opinion. I'm really going to go around the room, and I would like for you to tell me why change is so important. Why you think change and being able to adapt is so important. Does anyone want to go first? Okay. Tell me your name again.
Evan,
Evan. Okay.
because if there's never any change, then we'll never grow.
Yeah. You get to choose right or left. Okay.
I don't know, just because like in life, our environment is constantly changing and stuff, so we have to constantly learn to adapt, I guess.
Okay.
See what Evan said?
So you feel the same thing.
Yeah.
You may repeat that, but internalize it. I didn't hear you say it.
Yeah, if you never change, you won't grow.
You want, if you never change, you won't grow. Okay.
And you never really know what life's gonna throw at you, so
Yeah.
it's very good to change.
So how many of you things have life has thrown things at you? Obstacles that you've had to overcome? Anyone exempt from that? I'd just like to know. Okay, no one's exempt. I love that. That's all great.
Along with what all they've said, it brings you a sense of resilience, and that if you can change and you can adapt, then you can overcome things that life throws at you.
Yeah. It better equips you to be able to handle it, doesn't it? Yeah, when you can adapt to change.
I think it's important because if you want to get stuff or reach something you've never done before, you have to do things you've never done before. So you can't keep doing the same thing you've been doing.
I'm going to stop there. Can you say that one more time? Because that's really good, by the way.
If you want something you've never had, you have to do something you've never done before.
So taking risks and doing something that you've never done before can give you some amazing growth opportunities, can help your dreams come true, right? How many before you stepped on campus at Oklahoma Wesleyan University never have been to college before? Great. For those of you who did go to another university, there was a time when that university was your first university experience, right? You dared to do something that not everyone does, by the way. Not everyone makes it to college, do they? You dared to do something different. Did that require some change? What change did it require? Just throw it out there. What did you have to do differently?
Sacrifice.
Sign up for things, yes.
Also sacrifice.
Sacrifice. Oh, that's even like more important. Yeah. What kind of sacrifices did you have to make?
Friends, habits.
Yeah. So you had to give up some key relationships with people who didn't go on to college, I take it, to come in and do things a little differently. Yeah. What else?
Discipline,
Discipline. Why do you need discipline?
so you can get your assignments done.
Yeah.
And
Is there anyone there telling you you have to do it, by the way?
no,
Make sure you brush your teeth, take a shower, just put your deodorant on. You know the drill, right? Growing up from good old moms. That's gone, isn't it? Now it's you have to do it yourself. And you have to be self-disciplined. Those are self-help skills that we have to learn to be able to adapt, right? That is a change that you made, each and every one of you. What else?
Management.
Time management. Why is that so important?
So you can make sure you get everything done on time. And you have to know when things are due, so you don't fall behind. And that can lead to procrastination, and that's probably the worst thing in college.
Yeah. There's a statistic that was out about 3 years ago that I don't know what the current one is. And Bill, if you know, Professor View, please let me know. But for those that actually enter in and actually make it to the finish line, actually getting their degree, do you all know what percentage that might have been? I don't know what the current is. I wish I would have looked it up. It used to be 14% 3 years ago. Only 14% who enter into college actually make it on average throughout the U.S. make it to the finish line. So in this room, it's like 1 out of 6, 1 out of 5, right? Close to, actually it's 1 out of 6, yeah. And so I will tell you, that's a scary statistic, isn't it? And so if you don't have discipline, if you can't make the sacrifices, if you don't have time management, is that going to impact your chances or lessen your chances to make it to the finish line?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we do what we do, by the way, is because in here, we want to make sure every one of you make it to the finish line. And that we learn how to be able to manage this beautiful thing called life, to be able to make it and have the dreams that you want. But the theory of change is something, by the way, that some people, you guys, it's going to seem probably because you're sitting in a classroom right here, but there's actually people out there that really cannot even think about change. Have you heard the definition of insanity? What is it?
Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results.
Exactly, which goes back to your point, doing the same thing every single solitary day and expecting different results. That is truly the definition of insanity, isn't it? But there are people who do that every day. Those that suffer with addictions, those that suffer with depression and can't seem to pull themselves out. But for a lot of them, we can't see into the future. We only live in the tyranny of the moment. Have you all talked about the tyranny of the moment? You all know what the tyranny of the moment is?
We haven't, have we?
Temptation overwhelms you. Can't see past in front of your face.
There are so many challenges that you guys have identified here all the way throughout, and then we could actually plaster this room just on the things and obstacles that you guys, if we really got at it for about 2 hours, we would plaster this room just on the challenges that you all have to face. That was eye-opening to me because I actually conduct focus groups, and I went into focus groups with youth. Why do we have one of the highest suicide rates sitting right here in Washington County? So I really wanted to find out why were youth having such a difficult time, because you know what? It's not that much different than when I was young. You ever heard that before? It's not that different. I went through the same things you all went through. It's not rocket science, right? I was blown away. Because when I had a group of youth and they started to identify all of their stressors, and we're on our 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 12th, 15th sheet in an hour and a half, I was blown away on all the stressors of the youth that you've all had to face over the last 5 to 10 years. It is completely different than when I was young. Completely. So I brought in their parents and I had them identify what they felt youth were having to go through. And so they filled up one sheet and then they filled up the second sheet and they were done. That was pretty much it. And then I took them into the other room. And I want to introduce you to your child's reality. It's not the same. So we can get so bogged down in the tyranny of the moment that we actually cannot even see our way out of it sometimes. We can get so stressed. And even though we have the skill sets, and my child growing up in my household, can you imagine? I can say theory of change and he can tell you exactly what it is, right? I can say, let me see, he knew exactly where I was going. Let me see your room. You want to see my floor plan? I knew instantly, I know where you're going with this, and I'm going to be having to clean my room right now, and I know exactly what's going to take place because we've got to energize. But just because you know it doesn't mean you necessarily at times can apply it. And that's why you need a healthy support system. That's why we need to have people around us that understand and can communicate this, because we have to take it in a certain order. So the theory of change. You guys analyzed right there. This is it. People in poverty often don't know how to plan things out. Getting places on time. We could talk about hidden rules, and you will be talking about them here soon. And people in poverty, when it comes to time, they're usually late. There's always exceptions to the rule. I'm going to tell you that right now. Always exceptions to the rule.
They just filled, I forgot to tell you this, that they just filled out their time sheets for a week. That's what's due today, actually.
Awesome. Great. Yeah. And it can be a very difficult thing because you're in the tyranny of the moment. But we're going to talk about, these are very concrete steps, by the way. Very concrete. And so when we look at this inner circle and the theory of change, I want you to know it's this right here. It's whatever your stressors are, what your life is like now. Did you all fill that out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That goes right here in this inner circle. Right here. For a lot of people, what we've got to do is getting them to the abstract. What does abstract mean? What does abstract mean? Outside the box. If you're going to, yeah, the future, great. So we're sitting in a building that at one point was just a thought in somebody's head that we need, right? What's the first thing that they had to do? If they're going to have a building built, they're going to actually create this building, there had to be an abstract, right? We had to get these thoughts out of our heads, or dreams out of our head, and actually put it into paper so people can build this. We got to raise funds to be able to do this. We got to make this a reality. Your reality is you want to get a degree, so you can have this dream in your head of what you want later on in life, and we have to get it out of your head. We've got to get it written down. We've got to have goals to be able to get there, and we got to be able to move from our current reality, which is this is all the things that I have to deal with, and we have to constantly remember this is why we're going through it, right? To get to the finish line, okay? But for some people, they can not only dream, they can't even dream of the future. There is no abstract, and they don't know how to even take that first step. College is for those who are just lucky. They were born with a silver spoon. It's not my life. That is not the norm. And I can't afford to give up my relationships and move forward. So it becomes very, very difficult for them to learn how to be able to develop plans to get themselves up and out of it. So there's a real simple technique, and this is going to seem a little odd. In order to get where you want to go, you actually have to plan backwards. Does that make any sense to anybody? Yeah. You actually have to plan backwards. So the first thing you have to do is what is it that we want to accomplish, right? And then from there, we have to plan backwards.
Begin with the end in mind, right?
Exactly. Begin with the end in mind, and we've got to work all the way back. And we have to teach this to people. We have to teach this to people who really are caught in the tyranny of the moment, or ourselves. We have to remember, well, hold on. I want to get a degree. These are the steps I'm going to have to take. I'm going to have to get discipline. What does that look like? I'm going to have to get time management. What does that look like? And we're going to have to start planning our way back so we can make it to the abstract, so we can make our building a reality, right? So I'm going to tell you a little story that I have. I have a really good friend that we travel all over the nation with. And this particular friend grew up in generational poverty. And she, every time we have a flight at 7 o'clock in the morning, I guarantee you this person is barely making it on when the doors are closed. It would stress me out because she would always want to ride together. It would always stress me out because I'm a planner. And I like to be in places on time. And I like to be organized and things like that. So if I have a 7 o'clock flight, what time do I have to be at the airport?
6:30
At-
at least.
At least. And most of them say, yeah, depending on where you're going. If it's international, you need to be definitely 2 hours ahead of time. If not, at least an hour ahead of time. So we're going to be generous and say an hour there to check in, get your luggage, get all the way through security and get to the gate, right? So we're going to be generous and say 1 hour. So that means I have to be there by 6 o'clock. Now, Tulsa is not in Bartlesville. The airport's not here in Bartlesville. So what time do I have to leave Bartlesville to get to the airport?
5:45.
Yeah. Yeah, probably an hour. Yeah, probably safely. It's probably 45 minutes to be exact, but then you got to park your car and you got to walk in, right? So we're going to say 5 o'clock. Now, if I haven't packed, what time do I need to get up?
You don't have to sleep.
Yeah, probably 4:30.
Midnight.
If all your laundry's done, right? And
Yeah,
you're not
like
staying long.
midnight.
Yeah, if you're staying for a week, you can do it probably longer than that. But we're going to say 30 minutes because all the laundry's done. You're only going for a couple of days. We're going to be generous, right? Now, if I haven't taken a shower or anything, then what time do I need to get up?
4.
4. For a lot of people, and when I would say, tell my friend that we have to be at the airport at 6, I would literally knock on the door at 5 o'clock saying we're ready to head out of town, and this person hadn't even got up yet. And the stress that I'm going to have to wake a whole household up. They're not answering their phones because to them our flight doesn't leave till 7. Our flight doesn't leave till 7. And the reality is this person hasn't packed, this person hasn't showered, this person hasn't done anything. Now, I can do one or two things. I can keep living this life that absolutely drives me insane every time we have to fly together, or what's another suggestion I can do?
Begin with the end in mind. Know what they're going to do and plan ahead for it.
Yeah. And if I can't correct this behavior, what can I control? Mine. Right. So to save our friendship, I'm going to throw it on the line and say to my dear sweet friend, I understand that I am so obsessive about being on time in places that I think maybe we should just meet at the airport. What do you think about that? How do you think this friend felt? Because after doing a year of me being, in her mind, obsessive about something, and she's not going to be able to make this change no matter what I do to try to set this out, the best thing I can do is not stress myself out, but enjoy myself, go down, leave when I need to leave, be completely prepared, I'm there. This person is so used to doing it, they get on the plane and it's nothing to them as they're bringing their luggage on in their arms because they just barely got there in time. But to save our friendship, this is exactly what I had to do, because the reality is this person's probably not going to change.
I was gonna say, like, you gotta be selfish.
Yeah, you really do. You really do. But for my friend, she felt so much better because the pressure was too much for her. This was something that it was just out of her scope. I wasn't there to counsel her or anything like that. But when we have clients that come in and they start talking about, I want to be a model, and you're looking at them, and all of a sudden you're seeing that they have terrible teeth problems. Although they're beautiful people, I think everyone could be a model, because that's really where our society needs to be heading in real life, is beautiful. But the reality is that you know that there's dental problems, you know that there's discipline problems, or self-help skills that need to be in place, all of these other things, then we have to start here. So if I want to be a model as my career, then what's the first thing I need to do? Yeah. But they don't know that yet, right? So I probably need to get an agent, right? And in order to get an agent, I probably need to take some pictures, right? In order to take some pictures, I probably need to raise some money, right? And in order to raise money, I need to get a job, right? And so there's a process there that, it has a way of correcting itself out, in the sense that when we get a job, when we start to look at what it's going to cost to be able to invest into this, yeah, it can become a reality. But now we're getting them more focused in on what they need to do, and we're going to start here, and let's see what unveils itself as we go through this process, okay? And so learning how to be able to communicate the theory of change, learning how to plan backwards is a skill set that we have to adapt for ourselves, but we also have to help others. Does that make sense? Any questions regarding this? Any at all? So what you're going to be doing over the rest of this course is you're going to be applying this theory of change. And look for this everywhere you go. Do you know people who show up at the last minute, not prepared for class, or not prepared for a job, or coming in 5 minutes late? Do you know that? Do you know anyone like that? It might be you, by the way. And if it is, then this is where you start. Because if I need to be at a job across town at 8 o'clock, and it takes me 15 minutes to get there, and I still have to walk 5 minutes to get to my car in the parking lot because of parking issues, and if I don't have gas, then you start to look at what time you really need to effectively be able to leave, to be able to be there on time. So these are the type of things that I want you to start keeping an eye out for. Look to see if people have these kind of skill sets. It doesn't take long. I can sit in Walmart and tell a lot about people. Just sit on the bench, and you will find me there sometimes, because it fascinates me beyond belief. And Walmart is not a pleasurable place for me to go. I just don't enjoy it. But I love going and sitting on the bench and just watching people, because it's fascinating. You see how people communicate with each other. Have you seen that at Walmart? Have you ever been there at school time when the kids are getting their school supplies? Have you ever been and heard moms yelling or dads yelling at their kids? You all haven't experienced that? Have you ever been yelled at getting your school supplies? It's a time of war. It is. It's a battleground if you haven't seen it yet. But there's strategies you can wrap around that, and there's strategies you can do when you're walking through and seeing something like that too. And it's learning how to plan backwards. And for a lot of parents, this is what's happening. They wait to the absolute last minute because of finances, because we didn't budget it in. And so we're getting it the night before when everyone else is getting it as well. We can't find what we need. It becomes stressful. We don't plan out maybe just taking one kid at a time if you have multiple kids, and making it a fun event versus a miserable event. And so there's a lot of things that go into plan to being able to make that battleground a happy experience.
You know what? This year, I did that.
Did
I'm not even thinking of that. And I went and bought school supply, bought everything I could think of that we usually buy. I have 4 kids. Usually think of buying when nobody was in the aisles. I wound up with school supplies I didn't need, but I bought stuff so that I only had to go back and buy like 3 items when school supplies came out. And I'm like,
How did you feel?
so nice.
Yeah.
so easy. I'm
It's
sorry.
completely different. No, I think that's wonderful. That's what it's all about. That's one of many things that we'll have to start looking at in our own lives, how we can apply the theory of change. Okay, how are we doing on time?
What time is it, guys?
I have no
2:45.
idea. What is it?
It's 2:45.
Okay. So here's what I would like to do. I would like for you all to give me an instance where you planned backwards, or a place that you can apply this. I promise not to hit your head, and I won't call you big again, because I thought I figured it out. Okay, so, I know, sorry about that. He said Ben will, and you came over, and I thought you were Ben. Okay, so give me a time where you think this could, or a situation where you think this can apply. Do you know of anyone that you can help? Let's talk about some scenarios of where you can, one, either apply this to your own life, or two, help someone else. Let's talk about that scenario.
When you're applying for college,
When you're applying for college. What was that experience like for you all?
at my school, we had a few days where we could just we had 2 days where we could just research all kinds of schools and take surveys that matched you with schools. That's how I found the school actually, and just do all that. So working backwards, you'd be like, I'm going to college, well, I need to find the college, and I need to apply for it, I need to study, so my grades are up and I can get in, stuff like that.
Yeah. So there was a lot of planning backwards. Your goal was to get to college, and you didn't even realize it, but you were using the theory of change. I'm about to venture into something that I'm going to have to completely change my life on. It's going to be completely different than what I'm used to growing up in. I'm going to need all of these types of situations, and so we have to plan backwards in order to get there, right? Any others?
So I have a person that I have to work with, and I can't do the you meet here and I'll meet there. We have to work interdependently, and that's just how it has to be. And we've had multiple meetings with this person because they procrastinate to the very last minute, which makes my projects late. And so in order to save our friendship and to like this person at the end of everything, I've decided to make my deadline 2 or 3 days before I actually need it, so I can get my stuff on time, because they're pretty much 2 or 3 days late on the deadline. So that way I'm going to get it by my actual deadline, and then I plan around stuff to be adaptable, so that when I don't get stuff I actually need from this person, then it's actually okay, and I do my stuff way ahead of time, and just have to plan around their inability to adhere to deadlines, and knowing how they're that they just can't do it. That's just not. They're a very creative person, and their skill set is not in, I guess, administrative, what you would say. And so deadlines are like a suggestion.
Yeah.
And so I just work with that and say, okay.
So what's your thoughts? What would you suggest? If you had her sitting and you're sitting on the other side of the chair facing this person, what would you suggest in that situation? Any thoughts or suggestions come to mind?
I'm sure there's lots that come to mind.
I was just sure.
Yeah. you just-
Yeah, we've tried that too.
Yeah. Yeah. So the straight talk didn't get you any gains, right? Just probably some hard feelings. I like your suggestion though, because the power of language is very, very strong. It's a good suggestion. Yeah. What else? What other suggestions would you all have? You guys are brilliant people. I think in this room we could probably fix the government if the president would just come in and let us at it. I really believe that. So you tell me, what other suggestions do we have?
I would talk to your boss or your professor or something and say, here's all my stuff on time, but my partner does my first stuff on time, and I can't do these things without this, and she's not doing it. So then it proves that, like, you're not the one who's procrastinating. Maybe that'll help.
Yeah, that was good too, because we've done that too.
That was very good. I like it. Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Very good. And by the way, fixing solutions, there's a developmental process to any solution we have. And so you're going to find that probably a lot of these suggestions we hit, but there's probably going to be one that you haven't hit. So what else? I guarantee you there isn't, because it hasn't rectified itself, by the way. What else? What else would you suggest? All these are excellent suggestions. I would start right there. It's like 101. Take these steps. I think it's excellent.
I think what she's doing is fine, like the deadline or whatever. Because like with my family, like my mom's always like 2 hours late to whatever we do. So we'll tell her, hey, we gotta leave it like 2 when we actually can wait and leave it 4. And she's still usually like 10 minutes past the 4 one.
But you're okay.
But yeah.
I said that on my own wedding to my mother, by the way. The wedding is not, I told her it was at 5 and it was really at 7. My own wedding. Come on. I know, I'm with you. I get that. We're kindred spirits there. I love it. That's a great suggestion. So you have, which is what you did. You have the deadline, right?
We do that for church, my family does. My mom's like, let's leave at 9:30, everybody. Everybody 9:30. So by 10:45, we will be on time.
Yeah. I like that. So you have the deadline.
Yeah.
Do you all clue into that the deadline really isn't 9:45, by the way?
I mean, we know, of course, but it doesn't.
So are you out the door by 10:30? So it sort of works? But yeah, still a pressure, yeah, type thing. Yeah. Okay, what other suggestions? Any other suggestions? Have you heard the word enabling? I love that. Because for a lot of us, what we do, we actually have an enormous amount of power. Guess one of your greatest tools each and every one of you have? What is it? Yeah, we all enable, which that's not our powerful tool though. But because I heard each and every one of you open your mouth, you all have this skill set. The power of our words, oh man, language is so beautiful and amazing and powerful. And it can be done in such a way that we can honor people, even though they have quirky things that are different than ourselves. But to be able to say, very real, that we're going to have to work on this area. So here's what I need to let you know, that a deadline to me is not a suggestion. It's actually when something is due. So what do we need to do for you that you can make sure that you hit the deadline I need to hit? And so here's what I would like for us to do, is I would like for us to plan backwards to make sure you're successful, because failure is not an option for me. Not hitting a deadline is not an option for me. So we're going to have to work through this. And so we start with this individual and say, okay, so we have a deadline, let's do this coming up that needs something to be on this particular time. So what do you need to have to me? And what time is it? Well, I'll try to have it to you at least a day beforehand. Okay, so what do you need to